Fiji away from Melbourne. I do this trip about 4 times a year, and when I walked with the customs and biosecurity, they were also welcoming and friendly. I was out of the international airport pretty quickly, and I was pleased about this.
Gives me much pleasure to be here. In fact, there's a number of issues, of course, that need to be addressed. I've just returned from Vanuatu yesterday in the afternoon, and that was the last set of consultations we've had. As you know, we've been going around Fiji and holding public consultations both with members of the public, where anybody is free to attend. We then had consultations with the private sector specifically, and then we've also been holding public consultations with all high school students, in particular Year 12 and Year 13 students, which has been extremely engaging. One of the reasons why we have been engaging with the high school students is because today, as I've been saying, that 69.4% of the Fijian population is below the age of 40. So most of us here are in the minority. Those people are in the majority. And the reality is that we have to tap into their minds, their intellect, their emotions, their views as to what they want, what they think, because very soon they'll be the ones who will be leading the country. It's not just leading the country through parliament, but also they'll become business people. They'll become perhaps regulators. They'll become people, leaders in their own communities, in their own homes. So it is very, very critical for them to understand and have a good understanding of economics, a good understanding of the fact that the price of fuel is not set by government, the price of fuel is set by world market determinants. They need to understand that the price of flour or wheat is not set by the government, it's actually set by the price of wheat that's bought from Australia by the two people who actually make wheat into flour in Fiji. The very fundamental issues, in fact, in Fiji are not very well understood. And it goes home to the point of what your president was saying, that many of the issues in Fiji, in fact, for decades have not been addressed because of a lack of understanding by the different stakeholders of the issues faced by others within that particular sector. So it's whether a LTA regulator is fully aware of the challenges of the day-to-day issues that a bus operator faces. So when people actually sit around and make a regulation, when they make a law, do they fully understand what are the significant day-to-day operational matters that will actually get affected by a particular regulation? And there is obviously something that we've discovered, that there is a huge level of disconnectivity between people who may be actually making some determination about your sector and the lack of knowledge that they have. There's a huge disconnectivity. And a lack of appreciation, indeed at the same time, a lack of empathy of what you may be actually going through. I want to highlight to you a couple of issues today, and some of them, of course, are very significant. A lot of them are operational in matter. But I want to start off with the budget consultations. One common complaint we have received from the high school students is that the lack of proper services by bus companies for school bus runs. And let me tell you what those complaints are. One of them being that we generally tend to get the oldest bus in the fleet to come and service the bus route. That's one complaint. Number two is that the drivers are very discourteous to the school students. They talk to them in a very ill-mannered manner. They sometimes pick them up, they sometimes don't pick them up. Bus drivers refuse to take students after a particular period of time. After 4:30, they don't pick them up. So, for example, Year 13 students complain and say, look, we have to stay back and study for our exams. We have to stay back. The teachers ask us to stay back for extra classes. So we may need to catch the bus after 4:30. Or we are playing rugby, or we are training for soccer. Whatever the case may be, they may be going home later. So the drivers are refusing to pick them up after 4:30. These are very real issues, and I think they do need to be addressed, and you need to address them. We pay you $21 million a year in bus subsidy. And frankly, from one perspective, if the opposition were clever, they would pick it up as an audit issue, because we pay all of you $21 million, but we don't actually have a service agreement with you. Anybody who actually gives you $21 million should at the very least have a service agreement. And when you have a service agreement, That service agreement should actually stipulate your rights and your obligations. Similarly, the person paying you the $21 million needs to have certain conditions met before they should actually disburse with the funds. So I would like to actually have that done in the next 4 weeks or so, and I'll be approaching your association regarding that. Because we do need to lift up the quality of service being provided, in particular to the school students. Now, the reality is that we, of course, want to expand it. There are certain areas that the bus operators don't operate in. So, for example, in Savu-Savu, there's some school students. The bus actually does not go up to their village. So we have actually hired a private owner to bring his truck, and we pay for the truck to bring them to the main road. Then the bus comes and picks them up from the main road and takes them to the school. Sometimes the times coincide and everybody gets picked up and dropped off. Other times the truck owner is late or the bus is early and the kids then have to walk for another hour and a half to actually get to school. So this is, these are the kind of very practical issues we need to address. So we do want to get into the specifics of this to be able to put in place a very good service agreement. And there should be penalties. There should be, for example, the ability of government to perhaps even pay higher rates if the service levels are met. So that's one issue. I know this man is shaking his head, but the fact of the matter is you do have to do it. The fact of the matter is that if tomorrow, in some of these isolated areas, if we were able to provide services ourselves, we would do it if the service level is not right. But as you know, that the objective of this government is to provide and give out as much government work to the private sector. We have a very wide range policy regarding outsourcing of government services. So we are outsourcing, for example, cleaning services in hospitals. We are outsourcing road works. We are outsourcing a lot of other works that governments traditionally did. We want to outsource it. Now, the other fact of the matter, of course, is there is a recognition that bus companies in Fiji have also gone through many trials and tribulations. I mean, if we were to start saying who's linked to the bus industry, I come from a bus industry family. Those of you who are old enough would know that. Fourth generation was not able to carry on with the bus service. And I do know, I have cleaned buses, I've cleaned engines, I've worked as a conductor, I've eaten the dust from the wheel tires. When we were kids, you actually used to do that. But the fact of the matter is, many companies, as your president highlighted, have come through actually a particular development stage. And frankly, I think he's incorrect to say that all governments have assisted bus companies. The reality is that we need to be able to take a long-term strategic plan. The reality is there is a public recognition that LTA has not been doing the right thing. We accept that, and it has to be improved. This is why you now have a new CEO. So we don't want to pick from the same pool of people. The LTA was actually informed to get the best person who applies for the job. Now he's here. His mandate is essentially to try and improve public transportation system in Fiji and, of course, land transportation system in Fiji. So we recognize that. And we need you to be able to come up with solutions that will be practical and be applicable to everybody. I know within your own association you have issues. And I've said this to you before, when I've come here before. I've had people who've texted me since yesterday, some of the bus operators who've said to me, can you please ensure that the Fijian Elections Office conducts your elections today? Because we don't trust the system that's in place. People have written to me also individually saying that your constitution is not reflective of the voting rights of what everybody should have, that it's not equal. I know those issues. You need to solve those issues yourselves. We cannot come in and solve it for you. If you want the elections to be conducted by the Fijian Elections Office, you can, but the association needs to formally write to us and say to us, we want it conducted by FBOA. And we'll do it. There's no problem. But it has to come from you. We cannot impose it on you. So you yourself need to fix up a lot of your internal issues. You need to be able to ensure, and we know, and I've had discussions with some of the smaller bus operators, that some of the smaller bus operators, obviously the challenges they face are a lot larger than the bigger bus operators. The smaller bus operators have a lower capital base to work from. The bigger bus operators have access to finance. They have access to financial services from the private sector. The smaller bus operators don't. The smaller bus operators live on a shoestring budget. The smaller bus operators are at the mercy of perhaps people who provide services to them. These are some issues that you do need to resolve yourself. We cannot resolve it for you. And I think, as I've said to some other operators, that the reality is that once you're able to address these fundamental issues, then we can be able to provide uniform solutions. However, in the provision of the uniform solutions, there needs to be, as the President has highlighted, a recognition of sometimes there being points of difference. In the same way, for example, the challenges faced by a bus company in an isolated area where they operate completely on rural roads and gravel roads is very different to a bus company that runs on Tahsil roads 24/7. Very different. The challenges are very different. So LTA needs to be able to recognize that. Now, your President is saying that we need to look at, for example, pricing of bus fares. He'll be the first person who will criticize us in Parliament if we increase the bus fare tomorrow. It'll become a political issue. And that's a fact. They'll do that. In fact, I've just come back from Vanamlev where I've heard a lot of things what they've been doing. But that's besides the point. The point of the matter is, unfortunately in Fiji, we have a culture where when you try and make commercial decisions, when you try and make decisions that are for the long term, it becomes highly politicized. And as you know, that the bus industry has been highly politicized, in the sense that it becomes a political issue whether bus fares are increasing or decreasing. One of the things we did do, as you know, that a few years ago, we said to the bus operators that you need to be able to cap the bus fares, but we'll give you the ability to keep all the VAT payments, because it makes it a lot simpler. We also recognize the fact there's a lot of pilfering going on. The standard rate that the bus drivers take is probably 1/3 of your income. This is the standard rate that people talk about. And some of you have also complained about that. I just had some discussions yesterday with some bus operators saying that they have a huge problem in getting drivers at the moment. A lot of drivers are being taken away by New Zealand. There's a shortage of drivers in New Zealand. So they get work visas quite easily. So there's a shortage of bus drivers too. LTA needs to understand, whether they can actually make those requirements less stringent, because I understand that there's a rather stringent requirement now for bus drivers to actually get a PSV. So these are the kind of issues that we need to be able to, come to the forum to be able to discuss in a lot more comprehensive manner. We need to take a long-term strategy. The reality is that there are minibuses on the road. The reality is that there is a demand for minibuses. The reality is, I was in Korovo 2 weeks ago, that there's no issue with the buses there, omnibuses. There's a huge tussle going on between legal taxi operators and illegal taxi operators. There's a huge tussle going on between legalized minibuses and illegal minibuses. In Korovo, that's the issue. They were in fact complaining that LTA has given too many licenses to Londoni transport. They should not have given it to them, because now it's affecting their minibus. And they brought in smaller buses and much cleaner, so that's why people take that. I mean, this is obviously, Londoni seems to be doing the right thing. What I'm saying to you is that there are different parts of Fiji that have different solutions. Then in fact, prior to that, they have different challenges. So we need to be able to address these issues in a uniform manner, but be able to at the same time recognize the different challenges in different parts of Fiji. The person who's driving the central transport guy, he's only running around Suva. He's all on Tahsil Road. Probably Tahsil Road a little bit, but a lot of these companies are running on Tahsil Road. There's only one bus company in Tavyuni, Pacific Transport. I think there's only what? There's only your company in Vanwalevu, or three companies in Vanwalevu. So, you see, these are some of the challenges that we do have. Of course, there are numerous bus companies running between Suva and Nasori. Numerous bus companies running between Nandi and Latoka. So, we need to be able to take a very comprehensive report. And I would suggest to the CEO of LTA that perhaps you need to look at issues such as this, call a forum with all the bus operators. We don't even have a national bus timetable. Till today, we don't even have a national bus timetable. Of course, some of you don't like the idea, some of you like the idea. There's also those issues too. Because some people like to run on time, some people don't like to run on time. The issue is, should we be running on time at all? I don't know what the solution is. In the same way, when we did the report for the taxis, we said perhaps there's no need for a base ownership regulation. Maybe bases should be open. That was one of the suggestions we made, and we asked LTA to look at it. Maybe a municipality or LTA can dedicate, say, for example, 100 bases in the city. There may be 200 taxis, you run around, you get a space in the base, you park there, then you go away from there. Because at the moment there's a lot of illegal operations regarding bases. The other issue that I also wanted to address was e-ticketing. As you know that we put in place the e-ticketing provisions quite a few years ago now. The law has been there. Why was the delay? Because as you know, at that point in time, there were 3 providers that wanted to provide the service. One was Digicel, the other one was Vodafone, and the other one was Bula Fiji, I think it was called. Now, when we finally got it, we told them they need to be able to talk to each other, because we did not want a situation, and I have to reiterate this, we did not want a situation where you had the back-end processing and even the front-end of the 3 different companies not being able to be multi-operational. So just because I have a Vodafone card does not mean that I should not be able to use it on a Digicel card, on a Digicel machine. So we said it needs to be interoperational. In the same way, for example, you have your ANZ ATM card. You can now go and use an ANZ ATM card on a Westpac machine. So you need interoperability. Now, when we finally brought everybody together, we gave them over 18 months, I think, to get that interoperability working. They weren't able to. Then finally, Bula Fiji and Digicel pulled out, because they recognized also in their letters, as you could see, it was a huge capital outlay. It's not cheap. It's a huge capital outlay. So now we have finally Vodafone on board. Vodafone is on board. We have given a time frame until August of this year to get it all done. But we have a huge condition. We need to have the bus operators put in place proper protocols that needs to be accepted by us. So, as you would expect, if a card, for example, and we hope to issue different cards, so school students get a different card, the adults get a different card, and perhaps we can get people who are on, who are on welfare or have disabled persons, they have a different card. Assuming that the card does not work, and you'll have that some time to time. If a child gets on the bus, the card does not work. Will the driver take them on? Will the driver not take them on? If the child gets on the bus and says, I lost my card in the playground, will the driver take them on or not take them on? Will the child need to travel 10 kilometers on the, 5 or 7 kilometers on their own? What if the child is walking and gets mugged or assaulted, worst case? Who's going to bear the responsibility? So what we have said is that we need to develop proper protocols, so everybody understands what it is. Otherwise, if we go into this head first without thinking, or leg first in this case, without thinking, then we'll develop a lot more issues. Then it can backfire on everybody. I know a lot of people want it. I know majority of you want e-ticketing. We want it also. FERCA is here. They want you to have e-ticketing so they can track every single cent you make, so you can pay the right taxes. The reality is the tax rate in Fiji now is only 20%. There's no point chorrowing from the system. No point stealing from the system. It's only 20%. We've also reduced the duty on fully made buses that can come into Fiji. In fact, I'll be frank, when I had suggested this to FERCA a few years ago, they said, oh, we have to protect PALL, otherwise PALL will shut down. I said, PALL won't shut down. PALL will still have business. But we can still, of course, bring in buses ready-made so you can actually have the opportunity to have, firstly, choice. Secondly, you can have the opportunity to be able to refleet your bus fleet very quickly. Now, the third point, of course, just slightly digressing, is availability of finance and the cost of finance that's available to you. That's very important. I know a lot of the smaller bus companies, they want to refleet. Buses are 20, 30 years old. I've just recently done a survey and I can't remember the figures offhand, because we are within this climate change regime we are trying to look at how we can, in particular, refleet public transportation and bring in new technology. Your president mentioned electric buses. Those buses are extremely expensive. They cost $400,000, $500,000. Those electric buses have not been even tested on gravel roads. And you have to also look at electric buses on hills, steep hills, whether they'll have enough power, whether they'll have, how many recharging stations do you need? Recharging stations are not cheap. So there's a whole new regime altogether as far as electric buses are concerned. But hybrid buses is an option. China makes, some of the Chinese companies make good hybrid buses, some of them don't make such a good hybrid buses. You get hybrid buses also from Europe. So what we are planning to do, ladies and gentlemen, as far as the bus system is concerned, we want to give you a long-term solution. We want you to get new technology. There's no point in us saying you need new technology, but we don't offer you the right finance. The cost of finance needs to be right. So we are working with a number of partners at the moment to see what we can do to help you refleet your aging fleet, in particular those of you who are the smaller companies. How we can help you refleet, but it needs to be an entire package. In the same way, we had commissioned a expert who's been looking at the fuel standards. I think they've met 1 or 2 bus operators. So at the moment, for example, the 50 ppm, there's an opportunity to move to the 50 ppm. And we could be doing that very soon. And the source of that, it does not necessarily make an impact on your pricing. But 50 ppm has a less sulfur content, it also reduces the carbon footprint, and it also helps us to bring in better technology into the country. So there's a whole regime of issues that we are looking at to be able to help you to find some long-term solutions. As you know, that we've also reduced the duty on new tires, because we want to encourage, of course, the non-importation of older tires. We've reduced the duty, I think it's about 5% now? It's 5%. It used to be 32%. Now it's 5%. You can source it yourself, but one of the issues that we have found also is that in many areas of the economy, we have in fact zero-rated a lot of like food items, etc. We have zero-rated many other items, machinery, to 5%. But what we find is the people who are importing it is not passing on that benefit to the consumer. They eat up the difference between 32% to 5%, they eat it up themselves. So they have a much thicker margin, and in fact what we have found is that instead of reducing it altogether, they increase it, even though the duty has come down. The government has done this. So there's a lot of issues pertaining to that, and we need to be able to take a holistic view of that. I would suggest to you, ladies and gentlemen, that, and as I've said to the team, the Bus Operators Association, people who came to see us, that please develop those protocols quickly. We need to see a draft. I have not seen a draft. It's been now a couple of months. We have not seen the draft. And August is coming by really quickly. We need to see the draft. Maybe that's one thing that you can focus on. And as I've said, that we do not like the idea if a child loses the card that they're not allowed on the bus. The question from your perspective, of course, is what if they keep on losing it every day? So we then, of course, have a responsibility to say, if a child loses their card 5 times in a row, then, we will then issue them with a card, or you don't allow them on the bus for free. So we can tell all the schools, don't lose your card for more than 5 times in a row. So they know too. So I've suggested to Vodafone, when we give them the card, maybe you can give them some kind of chain, something to hold on to, because people are not necessarily used to it. So you have to think about every single thing. Otherwise, the PR exercise can backfire on you. Backfire on us, and he'll be the first one to criticize it too in Parliament. You see, so my point is that there is a lot of issues that we need to be able, we can solve those problems. But we need to think beyond our noses. We need to take a holistic approach to it. As you know, we are constantly looking at how we can improve the various other issues regarding, for example, importation of parts. Parts is a major issue. I know those of the companies who are the sole importers of particular parts, whack you with very high rates. I know that. Now, short of bringing about price control, there are other mechanisms that we can look at. We need to be able to open up the market if we want to address this issue. So I've addressed e-ticketing, I've addressed LTA, and as I've said, that the CEO, who is new, he'll obviously be very amenable. He's essentially, his mandate is to try and bring about new ideas, new thoughts. He'll be obviously open to ideas, to talk about it. He's looking at, restaffing, getting the right people in the right places. We're also very excited about his appointment. We also, of course, are excited about e-ticketing. We want it to work. It'll be very critical. As you know, Vodafone, originally when Vodafone came around, they said for somebody to get e-ticketing card, you had to pay $20 only for the card itself. So there's no value on the card except the card was worth $20. So the issue we raised with them is, what if I'm traveling from Kandavu? I come from Kandavu, I'm visiting my relatives, and I'm living in Rewanga. I may want to go to town 5 times. The cost of going to town 5 times is far less than the actual card value itself. So you need to actually have a card that does not have a value in it unless you put the value in it. It's disposable cards. These are the kind of things we've suggested, and they've now taken it up. We've also said to Vodafone they need to bring in the latest technology, which I think is called T3. T3. That's the latest technology available in the transportation system. And there's of course thoughts and processes around that. That once we get that and it works well, then we can use those cards on other modes of public transportation. So your minibuses should be able to have the T3 cards too. Then you'll know exactly how much money they make. Then you will be able to know how we can track their income. Then you can use the T3 cards also on the shipping services. So you see, it becomes, the entire transportation system becomes one seamless process. Even though you may use a bus, a boat, and maybe a minibus on the other end, everybody pays and uses the same system. That way you can track too. So these are some of the things that we are looking at. I also hope that we can get some more positive, feedback from you and how we can improve things. We had organized a meeting with some of the bus operators, with the Commissioner of Police, to be able to get that level of interaction. And we look forward to that. Please understand one thing. We recognize, and as I keep on saying, that in many international forums, also recently I've been away and I've said to them, I said Fiji is in a very unique situation that the public transportation is provided by the private sector. You go to New South Wales, the entire bus service in New South Wales, at least in the city area, all the trains are owned by government. We don't want to get into that space. We believe that you can do that. But we should be able to do that with all of you benefiting from it, feeling that you feel part of it, and also at the same time, you also being able to contribute to the public transportation sector. I've said to, for example, AFL, we need to have a walkway built out of the airport coming right up to the main road. So anybody who catches the normal Nandi Latoka bus service should be able to go to the airport on the normal bus. They don't have to take a coach. So they can get off at the bus stop outside the airport, walk under the cover, go to the airport to meet their friends and relatives. So, you see, these are the kind of things that we are doing. And as the gentleman introducing me rightly said, one of the reasons why we are doing this in the airport and getting the immigration people to smile and be friendly is because we want to make Fiji more attractive. By getting e-ticketing also, we want tourists to take the normal buses. At the moment, there's a sense that if you want to travel in Fiji, you take, the taxi. They should be able to take the normal buses. If you refleet your buses become more attractive, they'll take the bus, the normal bus, as you do overseas, when we go overseas. So these are the kind of issues, and I think there's a lot of potential for the public transportation sector. As some of you, as I highlighted to you, compared to 2004, 2005, in 2005, there were about 6,000 second-hand vehicles registered in that year, and about 3,300 new vehicles were registered, brand new vehicles. Today, by comparison, instead of 6,000 second-hand vehicles, we have over 10,000 have been registered in 1 year, second-hand vehicles. And the new vehicles was 3,000, today is almost 5,000 in 2016. So we will have traffic congestion problems. There's no doubt it's already happening between Nasinu and Suva. It's happening between Nandi and Lautoka. There are a couple of things that needs to happen. We have to build wider roads. Nandi Lautoka needs a 4-lane road, and that's in the pipeline. We will also have to start having things like dedicated bus lanes. We also, as I said, have to start making traveling by a normal bus a lot more sexier. There are people in Fiji who, when they do socially well, will have to bus mein nahi jayega. Going by bus is not seen as a sign of social mobility. In Fiji, if you're doing well, then you buy your own car, you travel by bus. But the very same, you travel by car. The very same people who go to Sydney and Auckland and catch a bus, no problems. But in Fiji, they dare not be seen in a public bus. It's a fact. People know that. So, you see, we need to, in 4 or 5 years' time, public transportation will become even more critical. To be able to move people from point A to B in a very efficient manner. And so we need dedicated bus lanes. We need to make buses a lot more attractive, make it the in thing for people to use. Because at the end of the day, we are actually reducing the carbon footprint also. So please understand, you play a very pivotal role in the transportation sector in Fiji. We want to make and take a holistic approach to the public transportation system. There are, of course, a number of issues that need to be resolved. A lot of it is to do with regulatory. CEO, you've got your work cut out for yourself. But we need to come together to be able to develop things like, national bus timetable. The president was saying about developing apps. It's a very good idea. You need to do it. But the only way that app will work is if everybody sticks to the bus timetable. You see, you don't even have a national bus timetable. If you have a national bus timetable, you load it onto the app. So when the tourist gets off the bus, he goes, okay, bus from Nandi to Wailoa or whatever it is, or to Nandi town. I know it will come at 6:48 p.m. The bus should be there at 6:48 p.m. Otherwise, there's no point for the app. There's no point using this. So you see, everybody needs to play a pivotal role. And everybody needs to stick to that. I wish you the best in your deliberations. As we've said, we have a very open door policy. Many of you I've spoken to. We'll continue to engage with you. I think we are at the cusp of doing a lot bigger and better things for the public transportation sector. We also want to be able to recognize the points of difference amongst yourselves, because we need to have some targeted assistance to the smaller bus operators. And if we are going to do some refleeting, we'll be looking firstly at the smaller bus operators first, in particular those with a lower turnover. And we want to help them first, because otherwise that puts a lot of pressure. And so in that way you can serve the public a lot better. The reality is, those buses that actually operate in very highly populated areas, there are a lot of buses running. But somebody is running in the outskirts of Tailevu, Naitasiri, Nandi, Ba, it's a tough job. We recognize that. It's a tough job. And you need to be able to be given a lot more assistance, because when your bus does not travel, there's a lot more publicity around it. Then, for example, between Nandi and Nosuri, because there are many other bus companies, there are other taxis, there are many buses running. In the remote areas, there isn't. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the invitation. And I wish you all a very good morning. Vinaka, thank you.